My name is Father Killian. Killian is actually my first name, but as a Benedictine monks, we always use our first name rather than our last name. My last name is Malvi. And I've been at St. Martin's. I came actually here as a high school student in 1952, and then I entered the Abbey in 1957. I went to the high school and then to the college. And my role here, in all the years I've been here, I've done so many different things. I mean, I think I probably have held every possible office on the campus. My main role is basically teaching. I've been teaching since about 1961 or so, and I teach in both the English department as well as the theology and religious studies department. And I love teaching. I'm still at it after all these years. And occasionally, I used to help out in the local parishes on the weekends, and I'm also sort of overlooking the junior monks of the Abbey. I help them with their academic studies and with their the work assignments they have and their basic formation. So, when the early monks first came here, they were looking around for various places because it was actually the local bishop, the bishop of Nisqually, who was looking for a place to open a school. And so he had written to the abbot at St. John's in Collegeville, Minnesota. That's where we're founded from, in Minnesota. And so the abbot sent out several monks and said, well, where are we going to have this school? So they looked at various places around here. Hicks Lake, for example, was one site, but they said, well, it's probably not a good idea to open a school right close to a lake. But this place here is about 600 plus acres that was for sale. And it was owned by a husband and wife whose last name was Woods. And so the area was called Woodland. So they bought about 600 acres, and that's when they decided to build a school here. It was a hilltop, and Benedictines always build their monasteries on the top of a hill. The idea is that that's where God resides. But the monks bought the place here, and it was actually called Woodland. And there was another woodland down further south, and the mail kept getting mixed up, and so they decided to change the name to Lacey. And the local, I think he was one of the city fathers, whose last name was Lacey. He thought it would be a great idea to name it after himself. So it became Lacey, Washington. One of the reasons they decided to buy it here was because it had a hilltop, and secondly, there was a train that was running just at the base of the hill. It was originally a passenger train, but as soon as the monks got here and started to build right where we're standing right now is where the first building was built. And then they changed because they were thinking that would be great because students could come in on the train from Portland and from Olympia and from Seattle and Tacoma. But they changed it just about the time they bought the property to a freight train. So anyway, they were here and they got themselves settled. And so this is where they built the very first monastery. In the building, it contained both the classrooms, it contained the monastery, it contained the student resident halls, and all in one building. It was like a huge house, really. The first monastery looks like a big house. And so when they finished that front wing, all of the classrooms, the students, the monks moved into that, and they tore this down. This is this one building that contained everything. And I think the sisters also came to do the cooking for the students and for the monks, the Benedictine nuns in Cottonwood, Idaho. And I think they had a small little house as well. But when they opened the school for the first time, only one student showed up. But they carried on the semester like it was like we had 300 students. He had all of his classes, and his name was Angus McDonald from Shelton. And then after the second semester started, they decided to open as we have more students that came on after that. I can remember when I was here as a student and also as a monk, we had an all-boys high school and an all-men's college. There were no women. And then we also had, most of the monks did the teaching, but we also had 4 or 5 lay men. One was teaching in engineering, the other was teaching in education. And they had daughters that were college age, and they kept pushing. Why don't we open up for women students? And so that's basically why we decided to open for women students, because the 3 or 4 lay men that were on this faculty had daughters, and they said, we'd like to get our daughters to come here. So we decided to open up for women. Finally, the monks were on the board of trustees, and they said, well, where are they going to live? And they said, well, we could move them into Barron Hall. I think that was about the only dorm we had, Barron Hall. And we could put the women students on the first floor, and then just kind of block off the top 2 floors of the second floor, so there would be no interchanging. And then, so great idea. And then one of the monks said, well, this is not going to be a good idea because there's urinals in the bathrooms of that first floor. Oh yeah, that would be, the women would be horrified if we had, so what can we do with them? And one of the monks said, well, why don't we just turn them into planters? And we could put dirt in there, and then we could put plants and flowering. And the women will never recognize that they were urinals, so we won't be scandalized. I thought to myself. Somebody said, yeah, and you could flush it, the urinal, and that way water the plants. So, my father drove me here, and I didn't know if he was just anxious to get rid of me. But I was almost 2 weeks early, and when we got here, one of the monks who was in charge of the high school said, well, gosh, you're 2 weeks early. And so there was nobody around, and so I got my duffel bag. I didn't have much with me, and I moved into the dormitory. It's up on the top floor there. It was the boys' dormitory, and Father Leonard was the dorm master. So I ended up for those first couple of weeks helping him make beds, the bunk beds. We had about 50 bunk beds in that dorm, and then we had the senior junior dorm, another 50 or so beds down there. So I ended up making beds and cleaning and scrubbing the washrooms, and then Father would take me down to Hicks Lake to go swimming on our bicycles in the afternoon. So that was kind of nice. So that's how I got here. And then school opened, and the football team came back a week earlier. So we had football practice down below where the old gym used to be. And so, yeah, and I always loved the high school. I'm still in contact with several of my classmates. Not many of us are still living, but there's about 5 or 6 out of my class of about 30. So, as you probably know, especially in boarding schools and in the high schools that were in college, you really find really good close friends. And you stay friends with them all your life. That's one of the nice things about going to a boarding school. So, the reason I was sent to a boarding school was because my mother and dad are from Ireland, and it was really important for them to send my siblings to the Catholic high schools. And there were no Catholic high schools up in the Port Angeles area, so that's why I got sent down here. It seemed kind of normal, but that was, that's what, in those days, going to a Catholic high school was very important for my mother and dad. Then I used to hitchhike we used to get 1 weekend off of a month. And I used to go out to the freeway, hitchhike up to Port Angeles for the weekend, and then Sunday afternoon, hitchhike back again for another month. So anyway, it was great. I have so many of them. One of the things I always enjoyed doing is that we decided to bring one of the students. I was dean of students at the time, and a student asked me if she could bring her horse. So we started the stables here on the campus, and we had the horses for probably almost 20 years. And we ended up with about 18 or 19 horses on the campus in the old farm. That was so much fun. I used to love to take the students down to give them, especially those who had never ridden before. And we had all kinds of riding trails back there in the woods behind us. and they're now used for the cross-country team. Everything they run through those trails. But they were the original bridle paths that we would run. So it was wonderful. We had, and the students used to love to go riding. So I'd take them Friday afternoon, they'd come running in, can we go riding? And then Saturday afternoon was another, we spent the time, we rode all over the campus. As the school was getting larger, and there were more monks were coming. We had up to about a little over 100 monks at that time. So there wasn't enough room there, so we decided, let's build a monastery. We didn't have the money at that time to build it, but we did build this building behind it here. It was built actually as a faculty office. The last minute, there was a change. Well, one of the monks moved over here, and we'll turn those offices up there into faculty offices. So that's where the education department is located. That's where my office up there is on the second floor. And so that was the reason why. I never lived up there. I lived down where St. Raphael Hall is. That's where the brothers lived. So that's where I lived. And then when we built this building, myself and the other 15 or so brothers moved in here. In fact, we still have our dining room here on the bottom floor. The monks, in all the years I've been here as a monk and also as a professor and a student, the monks always respected the difference in our students, regardless of their culture, their tradition, their background. We always tried so hard. And I know that for a fact. I'm not just saying that, but it's true. I think the monks were so careful about respecting every student and his or her particular background and tradition. In fact, you probably notice the colored flags you see sometimes on the faculty doors and on the bulletin boards. What that's saying is that we respect every student regardless of their sexuality, regardless of their culture, their tradition, their background. Everybody is welcome, just like Jesus would welcome everybody and accept everybody for who they are. I've always considered that there's two really important buildings on this campus. Number one, the Abbey Church, where our students and our faculty and monks come to pray and gather. The second important building is the library, where the students and faculty go to study. One of the Benedictine mottos is et ora et labora, to pray and to work. We pray in the church, and we work at the library. And I think because that's really the heart, that's why monks are here, is to seek God. And the church is a really important area where we come to pray daily. 5 times a day we go to the church to pray. And we wanted that experience for our students as well, that the church is available, that they can come to pray with us, the monks pray, come to the Mass and for the office, celebrating it. So it's great. And that's where we have, we hold our baccalaureate special celebrations. Graduation used to be held there, but we have our graduating classes are too big. So unfortunately we had to move down to the Marcus Pavilion, which is not quite as special, I don't think, as having it in the Abbey Church. Whenever we have any major event, just to give you an example, early in September, we're having the inauguration of the new president, Bill Brownsberger. It's going to take place in the Abbey Church. That is a really important blessing, a very special event. And so the Abbey Church helps us to celebrate that. Whenever any of the monks, for example, take their final vows or their ordination, it takes place always in the Abbey Church. So the Abbey Church is a wonderful place to celebrate these special events, and especially if they have a religious nature to them. So I think all students are welcome. We don't say only Catholics are allowed to come to the Mass or come to the church or come to prayer. Everyone is welcome. That's the bottom line. There's no distinguishing. The only perhaps small item is that as a baptized Catholic, it provides the opportunity to receive the Eucharist, that is the bread and the wine. And if a person is not a baptized Catholic, we usually say, "Dude, please come up, but cross your arms, and we give you a very special blessing." So that's the only tiny little bit of a distinguish. But that's a church teaching, so everybody's welcome. This is probably going back maybe 10 or so years, but I was in my same office there, and I was getting ready to go to class, and it was the first day of the opening of the fall semester. And that's when I could wear my habit. So I was coming out of my classroom, and this student said, she saw me, she said, "Where are we used to have phone booths on every floor, 2 phone booths. We had just taken them out because everybody was using their cell phones, so it was no good. But I had a phone in my office, a land phone. And so I said, "Go into my office, you can use the phone in my office." So she, "Oh, thank you." So she went in, and then I went down the hallway to touch, and I came back, and I was wondering if she was still in there, and I could hear her talking. And I heard her saying to her friend, "Oh yeah, they've got these really sort of spooky guys going to these long black habits on, and they have the hoods over their head. It's just like, it's terrifying. I mean, I'm not kidding you. Yes, they're all over the place." So she was describing to her friend the monks as scary kind of. I think there's something really healthy about having a joyful, happy, fun-filled experience every day. So, yes, well, now if you keep in mind, he had just left, or he was arrested just shortly before I got here in the high school. But what was interesting, when I moved into the monastery, it was his desk that I had got. And I remember pulling the drawer out and seeing his card. And then also hearing from the many monks that knew him, things he used to do, like he used to pull teeth. Some of the monks that had no toothaches, he'd pull their teeth, and he had no credentials for him to do anything like that. He gave, he was giving vaccination shots to students. He was doing all kinds of medical things that he just read about how to do it, and then he would pull the. And I think he also somebody had an appendicitis. He managed to operate on that individual. There was just amazing things that he did. How he got caught. See, he was a monk. He had a habit on everything. And one night, one of the monks was telling me that he was serving the coffee in the monastic dining room, and there was a visiting abbot from an abbey somewhere in the Midwest was here visiting, and he was talking to the present abbot, who was Abbot Raphael Hyder, and he says, "What's the name of that monk? He looks familiar." So he was at their abbey at one time. He said, "Oh, that's a brother, whatever his name was at that time." He said, "Boy, he looks like the guy that we had at our abbey who was an imposter. He pretended to be a monk, but he was." And so, anyway, he said, "Yeah, that's the one." So the Abbot Raphael called him up to his office in the building there, and he said, and he called the local sheriff, and the sheriff came, and as soon as the sheriff walked in, the imposter said, "Okay, you got me." So he, and what was so amazing was that he was brilliant. He was teaching the French classes, he was teaching the psychology classes, he was teaching the mathematics classes. He could teach any class. He was also coaching the football team in the high school. He was just doing amazing. He could fly a plane. He had, one of the monks was saying that he was taking some of his students over to Yakima, and he learned the night before how to fly, and he created a phony license, went over there, rented a plane, took the students over to. Some of the things he accomplished, just amazing. And you'd wonder, why wouldn't he have gone in to medical school? And I can remember years later, he was on the Johnny Carson show, or Dick Cavett, one of those. He was asking him, why didn't you just get your doctoral degree? Because he had no degrees. Get your doctorate degree and you could be a successful person in a particular field. He says, I just like doing one thing to the other. But he would go to cemeteries and he would get names off like doctors or important people, and he would make these certificates like it was his own. So he was an imposter. I would just say, number one, I've always felt my life was so blessed to be here at St. Martin's. I was so glad my mother and father sent me to the boarding high school. That's where I got started. The many years that I've been here, it's always been a wonderful experience. And I think our mission, that is the education of our students, is such an important calling for anybody who would be a monk here. And I think that's one of the great gifts. It's not so much that I have given a lot to students and to my colleagues and the faculty and staff, but I've gotten so much back from their warmth and their love and their friendship. So I feel myself so blessed, and so I'm grateful to the students and to the faculty and the staff and to my brother monks for so many wonderful experiences here at St. Martin's. St. Martin's is a great place, and I think I wish that we could have all of our students come here without having them cost so much, so expensive, as you so probably well know. And that's one of the sad things, is that we don't have, in this country, we don't really respect the education of our young people, because it's such a challenge to go to college or universities these days. And so that was my great wish, is that we could somehow have all of our students come here without having to pay these horrible bills. But anyway, God bless the faculty, the staff, and our wonderful students, and my brother monks. And I'm happy to be able to talk with you.